Hello, good morning, and happy Tuesday. For Tuesday 10 and 10, I am filling in for Dr. Lynn Carson today, and we'll be answering all the great questions we received for you. So without further ado, let's get started. First question. I work in a bakery, and we often find cross-contamination of ingredients, such as bacon in a white loaf of bread. Basically, how would you recommend I proceed, and do you think I'm being unreasonable because people apparently get offended? So first and foremost, when you work at a bakery and I'm going to put myself in the shoes of a customer. If I find a piece of bacon in my white bread, I'm going to be pretty upset. So first of all, you need to separate any meat and dairy ingredients with the other ingredients. You don't want any cross-contamination because there are some rules and regulations, I'm sure, in your state. I don't know which state you reside in, but I would just check it. And please separate. Do not, because think about it. You could have someone who wants something that is non-meat, who's a vegetarian, who's someone who's kosher, or you don't know. And it's much better to put a strong system in place, a good manufacturing practices as you're producing your products, and just separating everything. And if you have, the employees that are saying, "Hey," getting upset, so make sure that there's one rule, and one rule everybody has to follow the rule. Because at the end of the day, your consumers will thank you. All right, next question. Citric acid. Could you please help me with how much citric acid I have to use if I have to replace it with 1 pound of vinegar? So, vinegar and citric acid are very different. They're both acidic. Vinegar will get you in around 3 as a pH. A citric acid will get you even lower. So, and they taste differently. If you're using straight vinegar, for a bread, you have a certain amount you have to respect. There's no true, rule of thumb that how much can you add versus, if you're going to replace vinegar of citric acid, etc. The best and safest way to know is I would recommend to measure your pH of your finished products. Then you'll know exactly what you want to use. But citric acid being more potent, I would say start with at least half of the amount, and that should be the starting point. But I'm not quite sure you're using it for to preserve, to mold inhibitor system, where you're trying to, make sure that you have the proper shelf life. And if so, switching from one to another requires some testing and validation. It's not just switch it. And as I mentioned, flavor will be different. So please, verify, check your pH, and make sure it works. All right. Next question. High protein baking. For a good cake, flour protein content should be 7 to 8%. One side, we are reducing the protein content of flour, and on the other side, we're adding protein in the form of eggs or whey protein, etc. Just confused about how much flour protein and the added proteins are different. But it's a very good question. But not all proteins are created equal. So you're looking at protein of flour, which we're talking about gluten. Now you're talking about protein of eggs. You're talking about whey protein. So they're all different proteins with all different functionalities. So if you're adding it for a cake, eggs are being added for a structure builder, mostly. So, or also if you make a meringue for aeration. So you could not do that with a wheat protein, gluten. It wouldn't work to do so. And a whey protein is different as well, because you have to look, when you look at proteins, everybody says, oh, it's protein, but they don't function the same way. I'll throw some terms like solubility. Some proteins are more soluble than others. Like if you look at wheat protein, as we're referring to, it's insoluble, so it doesn't, become soluble in water. So as other proteins are. So even though, unless you're trying to make a protein content, protein claim out of your product, then it's a different thing. Then you have to really build it differently, and you have to see how it's going to perform so you can still make a cake. But to answer your question, the 7 to 8% to make cakes, it's very, very good. You don't need more than that, because again, you're building the structure of your cakes through different means. Example, the eggs. And the whey protein will be used mostly for claims, or sweet whey, dairy whey is used to replace milk or create a little bit of a sweetness, dairy notes. Hopefully it helps. Last question today on CalPro, calcium propionate. I am struggling to get measurements of calcium propionate correct. If I have 1 kilo of flour, how much of calcium propionate do I need to add to the flour? Good question. So, and that's something you can find on the Bakerpedia website as well. Overall, if you're using calcium propionate, there's a regulated amount. It's between 0.1 to 0.3% per 100%. So in your case, to answer your question, you have 1 kilo, which is 1,000 grams of flour. So if you do the math, so you will have to add between 1 gram to 3 grams of calcium propionate to follow the regulation. And the upper amount is used if you're seeing some issue. And that's better to, summertime, warmer month, humidity being higher than normal. So I use the higher amount if you have issues, but that's what I would do. 1 gram or 3 grams per kilo of flour. All right, so this was quick today. I will wrap it up for you guys. And again, happy baking and happy Tuesday. Thank you.